The Florida Panthers back-to-back Stanley Cup champions.
The Panthers scored early and they scored often, winning by a final count of 5-1. Florida's second straight Stanley Cup. That, of course, meaning the Oilers have lost in the final in consecutive years. Let's bring in Mark Connley, longtime sportscaster here in Edmonton, radio host, and I think as you know, even by the end of the first period, there were a lot of fans here who still believed the Oilers could turn it around. What happened?
They just made too many mistakes. They were outclassed in almost every aspect of the game. I mean, obviously Florida, double Stanley Cup champion. It's not a fluke. I mean, they're a really, really good team, and you can't make mistakes. And right from the get-go, the Oilers made mistakes that ended up in the back of their net and never seemed to get on track. They felt like they could come back in this series, and you see these goals from the get-go. Marshant scoring. Some of their top players really got on track in the last few games, and the Oilers' top players did not. Connor McDavid was nowhere to be seen in these last couple of games. A lot of mistakes on the defensive side as well, and the Oilers just didn't have it. And they're going to be looking at a lot of changes, I would think, in the offseason to try to close that gap, because Florida looks extremely good. Although you have to remember that both these teams finished well back in the regular season standings. The Oilers were hoping that some of the changes they made in the late going would help them come together and get to where they did not get to last year, where they lost in 7 games. And they did play extremely well all the way through the playoffs, but it felt like here in the final they just didn't have what it took.
I wouldn't normally ask you this about a news story, an election, let's say, or, some other big news story. I will ask you here, because you're not just a longtime Edmonton broadcaster, you're a longtime Edmonton guy.
Yeah.
How are you feeling?
It feels like they missed their chance. It feels like Edmonton missed this chance, to break that streak of Canadian teams not winning. And I felt like this was the team that could do it. A lot of people, last year was a big surprise. Everybody was like excited. Oh, they got to there. They stretched to 7. It was kind of a big surprise.
Yeah.
This year, people had expectations. And even when, Florida comes in and wins game number 5 in Edmonton, people thought, well, the Oilers can come back. But they never really got on track. And so it's almost it's a bigger disappointment this year than it was even last year.
I think you captured the sentiment of so many fans really well. Stand by, Mark. We're going to come back and chat with you for a sec. But speaking of fans, Madeline Cummings is down behind me in what was a very full and raucous moss pit. Pretty well empty now, Madeline. There was a big turnout, but of course a tough night for so many of those fans.
It really was. I started to see some fans leaving earlier in the third period, and when Florida scored that final goal, a lot of people decided to just cut their losses and leave then. I walked into a sports bar with a few minutes left to go in the third period, and it was just quiet. Not the atmosphere any of these fans were hoping for tonight. And as Mark said, people had such high hopes and such high expectations. They really wanted to see a Game 7 here in downtown Edmonton. I have a couple of fans here with me tonight just to debrief what happened. Nolan and Matt are here. How are you guys feeling?
We're okay right now, you know what I mean? Like, we already been here before, like last year and stuff. But you know what? We never doubt our Oilers. We love them no matter what.
You're still smiling. How are you feeling?
I'm good. I still believe in the team. We got Draisaitl, and then we'll lock up McDavid soon, and then we're good. We're still good.
What do you think went wrong tonight with the game?
I think, they have a good goalie over there too. I'm not saying that we don't, but you know what? Like, our boys gave it all they got, and you know what? I'm still proud of them for everything they did.
Anything to add?
Yeah, I think we got out-goalied, but we had to play a really defensive team in LA. Vegas was a hard series, and Dallas is much tougher than Carolina. They had more juice, and it showed.
So you're hoping for a better season next year?
Oh, we'll have a better season, I know.
Sure,
They'll have so much fire. McDavid's going to have so much momentum coming in. I know they will.
Well, thank you both so much for taking the time. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Go Oilers. Let's go.
Some sad but not completely dejected Edmonton Oilers fans downtown tonight, Ian.
Yeah, good for you, Madeline, that you found a couple of people not only willing to stay and talk to you, but also willing to talk about next year. The problem, Mark Connolly, is that next year comes so soon. free agent decisions have to be made in a couple of weeks' time. And could you imagine how hard it's going to be for these Oilers to get motivated for an exhibition game in mid-September and the regular season in October?
Well, that fan referenced it. They have to sign McDavid in the offseason because he's eligible for an extension, right? So he's under contract for next year. Fine. They want to sign him to a long-term deal, lock him down. They'll have those two for a long time if McDavid signs as we think he will, Draisaitl. So that's the basis of a great team, just those two players, right? But there's lots of holes to fill. There's lots of decisions to make about players who are on expiring contracts. Bouchard, their top offensive defenseman, they think he's coming in for a $10 million a year payday. You've got to manage all that under the salary cap. You've got to decide who's coming back and who's not, and who's available at free agency that you want to jump on.
Yeah, and for those of you watching in Nova Scotia saying, hey, wait a sec, there was another team here, and the other team had a lot of great players on it, like Brad Marchand.
Yes.
Let's finish by talking about that, because
Sure.
The Florida Panthers have won 2 Stanley Cups in a row, and they earned this win.
Absolutely, they did, and they've proven that they are better than the Oilers in pretty much every aspect of the game. Brad Marchand coming over from the Boston Bruins at the trade deadline is a great pickup for Florida. It proved to be, everybody was kind of like, well, sure, he's an older player. What is he going to add? He's playing on the third line. He scored some key goals, and he looked really good. Next year when he's playing for Canada at the Olympics, which is a possibility, so will this guy be, Connor McDavid, Canadians can pull together and cheer for Brad Marchand. But I know Oiler fans won't be happy about that. Probably Vancouver Canuck fans,
yes.
As you may count yourself. Not big happy guy about Marchand either, but they have a tremendous team. Weber wins the Conn Smythe. He was fantastic. That sticks in the Oilers fans' craw too because he's a former Flame. But just a tremendous player in the playoffs. Clutch. So many clutch players on that team. That's why they won back-to-back Stanley Cups. They just have so much talent and so much grit. They just smothered the Oilers so many times in this series, and the Oilers could not crawl out of it. You got to give them full credit. 2 Stanley Cups in a row.
Absolutely, and the players get to write the story here. We don't, but the perfect ending for a lot of us would have been not only an Edmonton Oilers win tonight and on Friday, but also to cap the final broadcast year of Mark Connley. You are retiring after a terrific career in July. Mark, it's been great working with you tonight, but at different times throughout your career, so thank you very much.
Appreciate that. Thanks again.
For now, it's back to Adrienne in Banff.
That's Ian from the Ice District in Edmonton tonight. Thank you.